My dad calls me PJ, some people call me PJ, some just Polly Jean, doesn't really matter.
People like to file PJ Harvey under big-mouthed poser or Nick Cave's ex, and leave it at that. She is accused of glamorizing violence, of turning breakups into blood sport, of writing war songs so vivid they were branded unpatriotic. Her albums have been called poverty tourism. Her stage personas, everything from traumatized waif to dangerous seductress. In this video we're going to peel back the lipstick, the uniforms and the rumors, and ask what was really going on in those songs, and why she still unsettles people more than most rock stars ever will. Back in the early 90s, a soft-spoken young woman from rural England shocked the rock world in the most sensational way. She belted out feral songs about lust and violence with a primal ferocity that had critics calling her a dark, melancholic feminist, even as they couldn't take their eyes off her. One minute she was on stage in scraped back hair and combat boots, howling like some pagan punk banshee. The next, she was draped in a skin-tight pink catsuit and smudged turquoise eyeshadow, looking like a Joan Crawford on acid. And in the middle of it all, she famously broke the heart of rock's reigning Prince of Darkness, Nick Cave. Dumped him with a phone call so abrupt that he nearly dropped his syringe in shock. This is PJ Harvey, often misunderstood, occasionally scandalous, and utterly transformative. The woman who became the face of sexy 90s punk. If you only have 30 seconds, here's the bottom line of this video. PJ Harvey's secret was shapeshifting. She took every expectation of how a girl rock star should look and sound and gleefully turned it upside down. One moment she was the bruised poet in big boots, the next a vampy diva in drag, daring the male gaze to look away. She summoned pain, desire, and pure adrenaline into art, used fashion and persona like a theatrical blueprint to amplify her power. In short, Polly Jean Harvey became a 90s rock icon by mixing vulnerability with performance. Raw talent in one hand, big mouth rouged red in the other. But if you'd like a bit more of an explanation, follow me.
Welcome. I'm Kira, and this is your beauty blueprint.
I've spent a whole week researching, watching, and editing all things PJ Harvey to bring you her very essence and share the best of my findings. I even designed a special PJ Harvey t-shirt just for us. Now, what are the ingredients of her unique, shape-shifting persona? You'd throw in a generous splash of Nick Cavian dark romance, a sprinkle of Leonard Cohen's poetic soul. She's often been compared to him. A shot of bluesy grit from her parents' record collection, and a streak of blood-red lipstick cutting across the mix. Stir in some androgynous punk, bake it under the stage lights, and boom, you've got a force of nature. PJ Harvey's blueprint is all about extremes. Hyperfemininity, utter, almost ugly rawness, but always with intelligence and a wink of sly humor. And do stick around, because by the end of this video I'll even serve up a quick breakdown of what we can learn, very, very practically speaking, from PJ Harvey's singular style. So settle in, grab a strong black coffee or a whiskey neat. Something tells me PJ would prefer it strong. And let's start at the beginning. Who is PJ Harvey, and how did she come to be the untamed face of 90s? Here's a little backstory, just to set the stage. PJ Harvey was born Polly Jean Harvey in 1969, and grew up on a small farm in Dorset, South England, a place of a lot of burial grounds and Iron Age forts. It sounds positively gothic. Her parents were the bohemian types, dad a quarryman, mom a sculptor, who filled the house with music from blues to punk. Young Polly soaked it all in. She was a creative, headstrong kid. The few village boys her age were once conscripted into playing roles in her childhood games. She would direct them, and insist they call her by a boy's name, Paul. That blend of free spirit and iron will would serve her well. As a teenager in the late 80s, Polly learned guitar and saxophone and fell in love with the idea of making music. By 18, she had already joined a local band and started writing songs. She wasn't a likely candidate for fame, a shy girl from the country, just over 5 feet tall and polite, but she had a fire inside waiting to roar. Her break came when she formed a trio called PJ Harvey. Yes, originally the name referred to the band, though soon everyone identified her as PJ. At 22, she unleashed a debut album called Dry that was like a wild animal let loose in the now sadly polite society of rock. Critics and fans quickly realized this was something different. Harvey's voice could go from a whisper to a banshee wail. Her songs talked about womanhood, sex, and anger in a way that was startlingly frank. One of her first singles, Sheelanagig, referenced an ancient figure of a naked woman and tackled the shame that society projects onto our bodies. In the song, she's essentially fleshing her inner self. Look at these, my childbearing hips. And a man who recoils. That kind of vibe. It was bold, it was unsettling, and it announced PJ Harvey as a new feminist voice, albeit one who never liked to be pigeonholed by that or any other label. British music press didn't know whether to coronate her or fear her. For a while, PJ Harvey herself didn't know what to make of the sudden attention. The world had never seen a woman quite like this on the rock stage, and as we'll see, their reaction would soon push her to an even more provocative transformation. Her 1992 debut Dry became an underground hit. Legendary critic Robert Christgau described its sound as divinely abrasive. It reinvented feminist punk rock, he said. Rolling Stone and The Village Voice showered praise. PJ was hailed as a raw truth-teller. Some called her the new Patti Smith or aligned her with the Riot Girls. But Polly Jean was never part of any gang. She was a lone wolf, and she'd happily tell you she didn't think in terms of male or female when writing songs. I don't even think of myself as being female half the time. I write about people's relationships. I'm fascinated with things considered repulsive or embarrassing. I like feeling unsettled, unsure, she told an interviewer. At just 23, PJ Harvey had released a second album, Rid of Me, that dialed everything up to 11. It was ferocious. The title track, Rid of Me, is basically a scorned lover's mantra, delivered with a horrifying intensity. And yes, definitely not the kind of he's gone, call me heartbreak tune folks were used to. On the album cover, PJ appeared nude, hair whipping around her in a feral blur. It was arresting. Not as a sexualized glamour, but as a kind of violent, messy fury. The UK press had already been agog when she posed topless with unshaven armpits on the cover of NME the year before. Now this. To some, she was a cause célèbre of her raw female power. To others, she was just frightening. But Polly Jean herself, meanwhile, was starting to crack under the pressure. Years later, she admitted she had lived quite a quiet life until fame hit. Suddenly, journalists were dissecting her lyrics as if they were literal diary pages, assuming she must be as tormented and volatile as her songs.
I think I've always had a healthy sense of humour to a lot of my lyric writing, which, you know, people often take it very, very literal. It's more, I just wanted to, in a lot of the works on this album, express a kind of joy.
She felt exposed, misunderstood, even victimized by the narratives swirling around her. After whirlwind tours and a meteoric rise that took her from Dorset to international stages, she was physically and emotionally exhausted. There was also a breakup with a boyfriend in this period. Not Nick Cave yet. This is a bit earlier. An unsung fellow left a mark on her heart. All of it culminated in a nervous breakdown around late 1993. PJ Harvey retreated home to Dorset to recover, unsure if she even wanted to continue in the music industry. She would later describe that time as a necessary crash. What emerged from it, however, was a rebirth, and one of the most remarkable self-reinventions rock has ever seen. By 1995, Polly Jean Harvey roared back with her third album, To Bring You My Love, and a persona so dramatic it made the earlier PJ look positively demure. Instead of distancing herself from the crazy she-devil image the media painted, she decided to lean into it with theatrical flair.
I didn't really start enjoying playing with my more feminine side until I was, you know, in my mid-20s probably, which was when To Bring You My Love came out.
She crafted a flamboyant alter ego, a larger-than-life femme fatale draped in pink satin, feathers, and paint. On stage, she now wore a tight pink catsuit, exposed black bra, turquoise eyeshadow, heavy mascara on lashes as long as Beatles' legs, careless red lipstick, and a scowl. Far from the barefaced punk of '92, this was PJ Harvey as vamp, the word she herself gave to this character. It was as if she said, "Oh, you think I'm a spooky man-eating woman? You ain't seen nothing yet." At Glastonbury that year in broad daylight, she strutted out in that garish outfit and owned the stage. People were astonished, some were confused or even dismayed, but everyone paid attention. Why did she do it? Partly as an artistic challenge and partly as commentary. She was always drawn to extremes and found a strange beauty in the grotesque. As PJ later explained, it's that combination of being quite elegant and funny and revolting all at the same time that appeals to me. I actually find wearing makeup like that, sort of smeared around, extremely beautiful. Maybe that's just my twisted sense of beauty. This hyper-feminine, drag-influenced look, she jokingly dubbed it her Joan Crawford on acid, allowed her to own the narrative. Rather than be picked apart as the wounded damsel of Rid of Me, she became a campy avenging angel, a messy celebrity in on her own joke. And crucially, it fit the songs. To Bring You My Love was full of gothic blues and warped love stories, with PJ singing from the perspectives of deranged lovers, murderers, even biblical characters. She became those tales, turned herself into a living art installation that asked, "Is this what you desire?" It was a defiant subversion of the male gaze and the era's expectations of female rockers. In a decade where girl power often meant acting like the boys or playing nice, PJ Harvey offered an alternative, an amped-up, off-kilter femininity that made people a little uncomfortable, in the best way. Audiences and critics once again were captivated. To Bring You My Love became her biggest hit yet, and during this mid-90s ascendancy, PJ's personal life crossed paths with another notorious rock poet, Nick Cave. Their romance was brief, about a year or two, but oh boy, did it leave a mark. Imagine the scene, the prince of gothic punk and her roaming London together in black coats, whispering intense things in each other's ears. They even recorded a ballad duet, the hypnotic Henry Lee, where their chemistry is palpable. See for yourself. For a while, Nick Cave was besotted. Polly Jean, it seems, eventually felt it wasn't working and abruptly ended it. Years later, Nick would admit, "I didn't give up on PJ Harvey. PJ Harvey gave up on me," recounting the fateful phone call where she told him it was over. He recalls being so surprised he almost dropped his syringe. Yep, Nick was battling many a drug addiction at the time. By his own account, Polly was a stabilizing force he perhaps took for granted. The breakup devastated him, but true to both their artistic spirits, even this pain fueled art. Cave poured his heartbreak into his 1997 album The Boatman's Call, a somber masterpiece widely understood to be largely about PJ Harvey. As he reflected, the split filled me with a lunatic energy to create something raw and true. Polly, for her part, characteristically kept her own feelings private. She's never been one to publicly dissect her romances, and she's had a few quiet ones over the years, mostly kept out of the tabloids. We, the fans, got some incredible songs out of it, and a tantalizing glimpse of PJ Harvey as a muse, not just a lone wolf. Now, just when you might think PJ Harvey had peaked by the late 90s, winning awards, influencing fashion and music, leaving rock legends heartbroken, she was far from done. In fact, her constant reinvention was only accelerating. Coming up, we'll see how PJ navigated the 2000s, flirted with retirement, and what surprising lessons her ever-evolving style can teach us about our own. So don't go anywhere. And if you're enjoying this deep dive, please give this video a quick like and hit that subscribe button. Your support really helps. I'd also love to hear in the comments, what's your favorite PJ Harvey look or song? Big thanks to all our current channel members and Patreons. You rock! Alright, back to PJ. By the end of 90s, Polly Jean Harvey had already lived a few lifetimes, but her blueprint, remember, is all about evolution. In 2000, she surprised everyone again with the album Stories from the City, Stories from the Sea. A riffy love letter to New York City and love itself. Critics call it a happy album. It's her most accessible work. She was in her early 30s then and had shed the vamp persona. But don't be fooled. Even with polish, PJ's bite was intact. She snarls, "I'm immortal when I'm with you," in one song with that old feral glint. The album was a smash. She could have easily ridden that wave and stuck to the successful formula. Instead, true to form, she zigged again and again, where others would zag. PJ kept experimenting. She released a raw, home-recorded album, played nearly every instrument herself, as if returning to her garage rock roots. Then she veered left and made an ethereal, piano-based album White Chalk, sang in a high ghostly register about Victorian-era grief in white vintage and geisha makeup. Fast forward to 2011 and she transforms again for Let England Shake, an album of eerie folk rock meditations on war and history. On stage, she wore a feathered headdress and an Edwardian gown, like a mournful war widow. This woman never met a comfort zone she couldn't demolish. Each incarnation was distinct, yet somehow still her. The more I talk about her, the more I see the similarity to what we discovered with Bowie. Have you seen that video yet? Well, call her chameleonic, call her mercurial. PJ simply follows her muse. She once described her creative process as unknowable and led by intuition. I'm not sure what the next project needs to be until it presents itself. I just follow dutifully while I'm being led, she said. In other words, she serves the art. Yet the private Polly Jean remained intensely private. She rarely gives interviews, and when she does, she's thoughtful but guarded. Remember that initial persona she cultivated was a protective mask. This persona provides a distance. It is quite a protection, she said. Over time, she became skilled at drawing boundaries. She doesn't do the celebrity overshare thing, quite the opposite of, say, the Spice Girls era of inviting cameras into your bedroom. Polly has always been enigmatic, which adds to her mystique. Camille Paglia, our cultural critic, once hailed PJ Harvey as some kind of heir to the fierce goddesses of art. In fact, early on the UK press hyped her as Camille Paglia's musical missing link, an avatar of true female power. High praise, if a bit over the top. Now, after more than 25 years of continual reinvention, PJ Harvey did flirt with the idea of stepping away. She admitted that during the creation of her 2016 album, she lost the joy in music. She was in her late 40s. Touring had become grueling and doubt crept in. Had she said all she needed to say? Was it time to quietly retire for good? Perhaps focus on writing poetry and books? It's a familiar crossroads for any artist who's been great for decades. But in Polly's case, the story has a happy continuation. After taking some time to explore other creative outlets, she felt the muse return, gradually, like an old friend. She was back in the studio, and in 2023 she released a new album. In interviews now, in her 50s, she sounds more at peace, even cheerful. She's still Polly from Dorset at heart, grounded and free of rock-star ego. But she hasn't lost that fire and curiosity. I feel a lot freer now, she said recently. With age, she's dropped some of the self-imposed boundaries and just making art for the love of it, not to prove anything. In a way, that is the final transformation, from restless shapeshifter to seasoned sage, who knows her power and doesn't need the shock tactics anymore. So, having ridden this roller coaster of a life and career, what can we take from PJ Harvey's beauty blueprint? Let's break it down into a few practical insights. First, let's embrace the power of reinvention. PJ never let herself be pigeonholed. The lesson? You don't actually have to stick to one style forever. Feel free to experiment with your persona, whether that's through fashion, makeup, or even the way you carry yourself. Trying on different selves can be liberating. Second, use style as storytelling. One of PJ Harvey's most genius moves was treating her wardrobe and makeup like extensions of her art. She turned the act of getting dressed into an act of psychological theater. Her outfits told stories about women and images with more wit than 1,000 think pieces. We can all follow suit, at least a little. Next time you're picking an outfit, ask, what do I want to convey today? It could be as simple as wearing a red lip when you need a confidence boost. PJ's lipstick was not just makeup. It was war paint, and boy did it send a message. Or maybe you wear a piece of jewelry that reminds you of a certain strength or memory. Don't be afraid. As PJ taught a generation, clothes and makeup don't hide a woman. They help her conquer. It's all about intent. Even her blue eyeshadow, which some might deem tacky, became on her a symbol of fierce womanhood, because she wore it with that intent. Third, dare to be authentic. PJ Harvey's beauty was never about classical perfection. It was about expression. She could look ugly pretty, or weirdly stunning, or just plain raw, but it always felt real. In practical terms, that means whatever style you choose, wear it because it speaks to you, not because it's on trend or pleasing others. Do what makes you tinkle on the inside, even if it feels wrong or potentially unlikable. Authenticity is magnetic. PJ could don outrageous costumes and still seem authentic because she was inhabiting them fully for herself. I repeat, for herself. Finally, contrast. PJ Harvey often played with masculine versus feminine, soft versus hard. Early on, she was a tiny woman making a lot of noise. That contrast made her riveting. Then she was dressed to kill, but singing about frailty. For example, it's like doing a sweet, natural makeup look except for one daring element, like PJ's heavy eyebrows, intentionally overdone. The unexpected contrast is interesting. It already says you're not one-dimensional. And above all, the overarching lesson of PJ Harvey's blueprint: don't fear what others might label too much. Throughout her career, when critics thought she was too raw, too angry, too sexual, too theatrical, she only pushed further. And in doing so, she expanded the space for women in music. The next time you worry you're too loud, too emotional, too ambitious, too weird, remember PJ and consider that those might actually be your superpowers when used thoughtfully. Sometimes the very things that make people uncomfortable are the things that change culture for the better. Pour your feelings into something creative. And don't be afraid to put on a new costume and reinvent. You just might discover a new truth in the process. I've queued up the next chapter for you here. I'll see you soon. Love, Kira. Now go create your own blueprint.